Okay. Hi, everyone. We have the next speaker with us, delivering more interesting deep tech with us, Sebastian Harris-Labine from VDE. Hi, Sebastian. How are you doing there?
Hello, Rico. I'm fine, thank you, and thanks for bringing me onto stage here.
No, it's our pleasure. So feel free to share your screen with us and yeah, take the stage.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. And this is actually a perfect follow-on for Oles Petriev's talk just now, and very thoughtfully put the two of us back to back. So thank you for that. So my topic is defending trust and identity, the new frontier in the AI age. And I'd like to kick off with one or two words about my organization, because you might not be aware who we are. And I guess the key figure here is that it's an old organization, so this is not a typo. It still really exists since 1893. It's the largest engineering association in the European Union, and we do a whole raft of things, building a bridge from research to application, conducting a lot of safety and performance testing and certification, and we've also got a formal role in standardization. We're actually the German footprint of IEC and ITU. So we've just seen from Oles the demonstration of what AI is capable of doing. And I can't fool you anymore because you will know and guess immediately that these are not real people. These are actually AI-generated people and faces. This is from the demo by NVIDIA, actually already a year ago. And you can see that it's impossible to tell that these are not real faces, even if you know what you want to look for. And if you look at the history of such attempts to generate faces, it's quite amazing. If you just go back a handful of years, you can see that the development has been in leaps and bounds up to the current status today. And I can't even imagine how it will continue into the future. Oles has also obviously pointed out the capabilities of video. There are many, many applications of the deepfakes toolkit. Here, this is an application where you imprint your own facial expression onto another person, and with sufficient computing power, it can even be done live and including audio. And a more recent application is actually the animation from a single picture. This has been the craze on Instagram for a few weeks and months now. The same technology is here being demonstrated on a website, MyHeritage, and it just takes a single image from one person from one picture and allows animating it. I'd like to skip to another side of generation of content by AI, which has also been in the news and been a buzzword recently, the generation of text. And of course, the chief application there, or the chief toolkit there is OpenAI GPT-3. Here's a very simple example. On the left-hand side, you have a few bullet points. And on the right-hand side, GPT-3 has actually generated a very well-formed email from those bullet points. Those bullet points needn't just be an email, it could also be a list of characteristics of a product, and GPT-3 could create a product review from those bullet points. In contrast to its predecessor, GPT-2, GPT-3 is actually capable of producing different speaking styles. So here you've got a source sentence: what I cannot create, I cannot understand. So this is something that the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman would have said. And you can tell GPT-3 to create a sentence that says more or less the similar thing, but is formulated in clickbait style. And then all of a sudden it reads, "Are we smarter than a Turing machine?" And you can see in the list in the middle, there's quite a few different styles, or a whole range of styles that you can pick from. So here we've already got an application where AI can generate different variants of the same text or the same content. Now, What is maybe even less well known is that GPT-3 is not only capable of generating human readable text, but it's also capable of generating code. And if you can generate code, you can generate pretty much everything, for example, websites, documents, and so on. So here there's a little prompt, a website like stripe.com that is about a chat app. That's all GPT-3 needs to generate a website that, at least at first glance, is usable and very similar to the prompt. And you can, of course, imagine other use cases and other prompts. For example, please create a diploma from Harvard University in the name of John Doe with a top grade. Or maybe a little bit more sinister, please create a clone of the website of a rating agency that is modified to advise investing in company X. Another demonstration puts text and image together. So here in this demonstration, we've got a little prompt, a young Black woman with long hair that works in finance, lives in Boston and loves cats, is being transformed into a whole profile. So you have a very convincing, but obviously AI-generated profile picture. You've got a convincing background picture. You've got a believable, credible employment history, and you're in fact able to interact in a chat with this particular auto AI-generated person. And maybe most impressively, this example here, where a company called Our1.ai requires just 7 minutes of video provided by you to create an AI clone. So if you want to produce content, for example, for language learning or for other learning content, you don't really have to speak yourself. All you need to provide is 7 minutes, and then a clone can create a whole set of lessons from a script. And you can use the same for customer support and applications as a tour to be shown around some properties, or even for interview situations. So this is actually some very pretty impressive and exciting technology that has only become available in the last 2 or 3 years. So where does that leave us? If we take all this together, all these capabilities to generate video, to clone people, to generate text, we really have to say goodbye to this old world. In the old world, people and their content went online. So this is a very, very simplified picture of the internet in the old world. In the new world, you've also got AI automated or AI generated content and very convincing personas or very convincing bots. And of course, they are scalable almost without any limits to hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of such bots and their associated content. And as several speakers today have pointed out, those AI content generators get better and better. And so the AI generated content and also the AI generated bots are actually becoming indistinguishable from human beings. And that poses an interesting question. Now, Ollis has argued very convincingly how important it is to prevent abuse, because some of that content could be fake product reviews. Some of that content could be manipulated stock buzz. No need for a whole Reddit group in the future to work on the GameStop stock price. It just needs one person that can flood Reddit with AI-generated so-called people. You can have mass fabricated comments also in the political arena. So you can simulate political majorities, even though maybe it's only just a single opinion. You can create fake news presenters. You can create fake reporters. You can create fake influencers on YouTube that acquire followers, that interact with those followers, and build a whole world that is really just the multiplication of the wishes and the desires of just one person. And also, if you think about the judicial system, you can obviously create fabricated evidence. So a dashcam video is no longer reliable in the future. And maybe even worse, if you then present real evidence, a jury or a judge might say, oh, well, no, we don't believe that. That's probably just fake because you know what AI is capable of today. And all of a sudden, your real evidence is rejected. So that opens up a new frontier. What and who do we want to trust? And how do we decide what and who we want to trust? Now, in the previous talk, countermeasures were already mentioned. We have a whole raft of activities to detect fake video, to detect bots, to detect other fakes. So there's the Hackathon for Good. There are companies that monitor the activity on large platforms and try to identify the patterns used by bots. And there are tools provided by even large companies like Microsoft to detect deep fakes. But assuming that those fakes are not watermarked in the ethical way that Olis outlined earlier, it's an arms race. It's a detection arms race. And there is no way that the detection tools will have a sustainable advantage over the fabrication tools. So we need a game changer to go beyond that arms race. And the question is, what game changer do we need so that amongst all the fabricated, the AI-generated content and people online, we can still identify the real human beings and the content that they generated? Now, you could say, well, there's an easy answer to that. Of course, we can prove who we are. We've got ID cards, we've got documents. There are many ways of using your ID card to prove who you are, and be it through directly electronic means that you have a electronic signature to go online, be it that you just wave your ID card into, or your other documentation into a camera, or be it that you use more advanced frameworks such as self-sovereign identity. So of course, yes, it is possible to be trusted and to prove in the digital world, even amongst all the AI-generated content, that you are a real person. And this is obviously a step up from just using your real name unverified and just claiming that you're John or Jane or Jill, because then, of course, people can assume and will assume that you might just be a bot or a clone. Now, the disadvantage of either going online with your ID card or revealing your unverified real name is, of course, that your identity becomes public. And there are quite a few very, very valid and important use cases where you might not want to do that. So, for example, you might want to leave your professional life and your private life separate from each other. You might have political issues to contend with. You might have a whistleblowing situation. You might be in sensitive environments, for example, in recruitment, in headhunting, or in scouting out investments. So there are lots of good use cases and good reasons why you might want to have your identity protected online. And right now, the way to do it is to stay completely anonymous. But then, of course, we are still in the bottom half of this picture. We're still untrusted, and people will still assume that we're probably just a bot or a clone. So if we look at this chart, we have a missing quadrant here. We have that missing quadrant in the top right, a way of identifying yourself online where you can be trusted and proved to be a human being, but where at the same time, your identity, your true real-life identity, is protected. That is missing in the digital space. And the capabilities of AI to generate content and to generate convincing bots makes it very, very urgent that we fill this quadrant. So what could be in there? How do we fill this quadrant? Well, I'll throw out a buzzword here, a new buzzword. We've called the missing piece, the missing quadrant, authentic pseudonyms. So it's clear that you need pseudonyms. You need a name that makes you recognizable, but that is different from your real life name. And you need those pseudonyms to have two very specific properties. First property is it has to be guaranteed that a pseudonym, such a special authentic pseudonym, belongs to a physical person. We don't need to know who it is. In fact, it's best if this is impossible to know, but we need to be able to be sure that it belongs to a physical person. And the second characteristic is if I create such an authentic pseudonym for myself, for example, on a platform that reviews travel or that reviews restaurants, or on a media website where I engage in some political commentary, it must be possible for me to generate only one pseudonym in a given context. Because if I can generate 100 or 1,000 pseudonyms in the same context, then, well, I can just attach those to 100 or 1,000 bots, and I haven't really gained anything. So we need those two characteristics, the guarantee that it's tied to a physical person and the guarantee that it's singular in a given context. The good news is that there are already technical ways of achieving that. I'll throw out something that is very well known only to a small number of people. This is actually a standard restricted identification that is already available in certain ID cards. For example, the German ID card has had it since 2010 already. It's not used so far, but it is possible to generate authentic pseudonyms that do not reveal your real name, just using the cryptographic computational capability in those ID cards. It's of course also possible to imagine that you could create a wrapper around self-sovereign identities to achieve a similar thing. In both cases, you need to think about, well, what is actually the anchor for your trust? If you use ID cards, then your trust anchor is the issuing government. And that might be acceptable for some people in some countries. It might not be acceptable in other contexts. If you base authentic pseudonyms on self-sovereign identity, then your trust anchor is obviously the self-sovereign identity, but also the blockchain that it sits on. But then the picture becomes broader. There are other entities to consider there as well. So you can think about trust transparency networks. So if I have trust anchors, and if I know that I'm dealing with real people, I can start tracking who do I want to trust. And I can build protocols and tools to help me estimate how much I want to trust some new person that appears online. So imagine a new blog appears online. There's some interesting content in there, some surprising statements, but I don't really know whether I can trust that blogger or not. But if I had a way of, for example, knowing who of my friends who I trust already trust that new blogger, at least I have an indirect, rough way of estimating initially how far I want to trust that new blogger. So that's just an example of trust estimation protocols that need to be developed here. There's also a lot of potential for trust as a service. And interestingly, I haven't seen that term coined anywhere yet. But we think that this is actually one of the most important products or services that live in this missing quadrant. It could be data trusteeship, it could be identity trusteeship. And overall, what you want to achieve is that you really can be sure that one person in the digital space has got one voice rather than 1,000 or 10,000 voices artificially amplified. So what I'm showing here in my green client is just a sampling of what we expect to be a trusted information and identity ecosystem that is emerging. Now, as you can imagine, since I'm talking about this in such detail, we're actually quite active in this space. And we started last year, actually the year before, to build a coalition to bring together partners and to slowly build this trusted information and identity ecosystem. We've got quite a few partners on board already. We're working with the German government, we're working with some European institutions, with some academics and companies. But our goal is to broaden the coalition. So if you're a technology startup or even an established enterprise with knowledge and technology that adds to this missing quadrant, if you're an individual or an institutional investor, if you're a philanthropist, if you're a civil society NGO, or in fact a think tank, then please do get in touch. My contact details are here. I'm on LinkedIn. And I'd be very happy to hear from you so that we can build that trusted information and identity ecosystem together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. And we should be in touch.